So Dr. Ian Bremmer, he is with the Eurasia, the founder and president, actually, the Eurasia Group. EurasiaGroup.net is their website. And his Twitter, Ian Bremmer, that's two M's, E-R. He's the president of the Eurasia Group, the world's largest political risk consultancy. He also writes for the Financial Times, Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal, LA Times, New York Times. He's authored or edited 5 books and teaches at Columbia University. Dr. Bremmer, welcome to the program.
Hey, happy to be with you.
Thank you very much. I know you were somewhat skeptical that this moment might come. Back July 29th in the Financial Times, you were raising some concerns, but here we are. So given this context, well, actually, first, for our listeners who don't know what the J-curve is, why don't you lay a little foundation on that?
Sure. Well, the J-curve looks at the relationship between a country's openness and its stability. And if you look at that plotted, it's hard to do on the radio, but if you think of stability being the vertical axis and a country's openness to goods, ideas, transit of people, all of that on the horizontal axis, it looks like a J. What that means is that there are a lot of countries out there that are stable because they're open to globalization and all the rest, the United States, Scandinavia, France, Japan. But there are other countries that are stable because they're closed. And countries that are stable because they're closed want to stay closed. The authoritarian leaders understand that because, there's a huge dip in the J, and it's very steep on the left-hand side, and you see that.
Right. If I may, the countries that are closed and want to stay closed, for example, Saudi Arabia, they just recently, I believe, gave $10,000 to every single member of every person in the country out of their oil revenues in order to prevent there being an Arab Spring in Saudi Arabia, that kind of thing? Is that what you're talking about?
Not only have the Saudis put a lot of money into Saudi Arabia, but of course the Saudi view on the Arab Spring in other countries in the region is very different than that we've seen from the Western democracies, which is in Bahrain, make sure that the king is shored up, which, they view this as a threat. Right. To these established autarchies, and it's a question of spending money, it's a question of supporting the militaries, it's a question of expanding the Saudi-led Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, which they've just invited the Jordanians and the Moroccans to join.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so pardon I interrupted you as you were getting into that. Between open and stable governments, the United States, Western Europe, and closed but stable governments, Saudi Arabia, for example, there is this dip where countries are less open and less stable.
Right. This is the big question, of course, with China, is can China move from being a closed state to becoming a more open state? Clearly, while they're not a democracy, the people in China have a lot more information about what's happening in their country and outside it than they used to.
Right.
Can that happen without causing extraordinary instability? Right. Huge economic growth helps, but it doesn't guarantee it. And of course, in countries like Libya and countries across the Middle East, after the financial crisis of 2008, a lot of them were in a lot of trouble. And this is one of the reasons why Egypt and Tunisia fell apart as quickly as they did.
Would it be reasonable in the context of this frame to suggest that Egypt might have, at least over the short term, had a better outcome because they had civil institutions? They were all based in the military, but at least they were there, that survived the passing of Mubarak. The court system didn't fall apart. The police didn't fall apart. Many of the government-owned businesses continued operating, even though they were owned by the military. So although you could argue that basically it's a junta that's running the country, at least it's stable and it's becoming more open, or it seems to be. Whereas in Libya, you've got a country that is the size of a major U.S. state. I don't know which one to compare it to. Perhaps you do. But it has a population of only a couple million people.
Right.
And so, it's mostly tribal, it's mostly rural, it's mostly illiterate, and it doesn't have the institutions of governance other than that iron fist that Gaddafi had to make it through that J-curve from closed and stable to open and stable. Is that
you put your finger on it. Egypt, let's face it. When you have civil instability and insurrection in countries like this, and deeply authoritarian countries, and entrenched and consolidated authoritarian countries like Egypt, like Libya, it's a dangerous period. And on the one hand, what's happening in Egypt is disappointing to a lot of those wonderful young folks that were demonstrating in Tahrir Square, because while Mubarak is gone and now under trial, you still have the same military leaders and the same intelligence folks and those same institutions. But it's precisely those institutions that are going to help to ensure that the country is not going to fall into complete and utter disarray. And so moving too quickly towards democratization would really be a problem in Egypt. And managing that transition and that balance, of course, is a very, very tricky thing to do. But it's unlikely that Egypt is now going to fall apart. They have a better chance of moving slowly, incrementally, in a direction more like Turkey.
Through the J curve.
Yes, absolutely. Where in Libya, you're right. I mean, there were no guarantees that Gaddafi was going to get enough. The rebels were getting enough support to remove Gaddafi. They had to get a little lucky, and it looks like they've gotten a little lucky. And it looks like Gaddafi, whether it's a matter of hours or days, is going to be gone. But that, in a sense, that's the easy part. I mean, the U.S. could have taken out Gaddafi themselves, or the NATO, if they just wanted to engage in broader direct airstrikes. They also would have killed a lot of civilians. Leaving aside whether or not that would have been a good idea, very different story, very different show. The point is that now that you've removed Gaddafi, what do you have in Libya? You have no institutions that are effective. The rebels have never run a government before. And the fact that the West is now saying, well, the future of Libya is in the hands of the Libyans. Which Libyans? The Libyans that just are motoring into Tripoli? Because I assure you, they come from different tribes than the ones that used to control the oil wealth in the country. Who's going to decide which Libyans are going to make those decisions? Is the international community going to help? Are they going to enforce it? Are we going to have peacekeepers? Those are really important questions.
We have just a minute left. Would it be not inaccurate to suggest that if we don't intervene in a way that at least helps establish civil institutions and maybe even make some decisions about winners and losers, that the next step for Libya will be civil war?
It's either going to be civil war or it's going to be reversion to an authoritarian rule that comes from a very different tribe. So you'll have different haves and different have-nots, but it'll be less stable than what you had before. That doesn't mean the U.S. needs to be leading the intervention, but it does mean the international community has let's face it, Gaddafi would not be there, would not be out if it weren't for the international community. There will not be stable governance going on if there's not going to be the international community intervening.
Right. And we're facing these same problems and issues, frankly, in Iraq and Afghanistan as well.
In Afghanistan, very, very clearly. In Iraq, there's enough decentralization and cash that it's actually becoming a more successful story.
Very interesting. Dr. Ian Bremmer, you can read about it at EurasiaGroup.net, and, of course, his writing's all over the Internet. Dr. Bremmer, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.